phase.
Welcome back. Third Phase of Moon. This is Blake Cousins live, taking your reports, calls, UFO sightings from around the world. And we have a special guest right here at Third Phase of Moon. Everybody's heard of Billy Meier. He's had encounters at the age of 5. 65 years later, the story continues. Incredible footage, photographs, videos, you name it, Billy Meier's got it. Very controversial person. A lot of people say it's a massive hoax. But we have special guest, Michael Horn, representative of Billy Meier right here in the United States, and Michael's right here with us at Third Phase of Moon. Welcome, Michael Horn, to the show.
Well, thank you, Blake. It is a pleasure to be speaking with you where you are located on the beautiful island of Hawaii, I gather.
Absolutely beautiful day over here in the big island of Hawaii, and the skies are blue and the sun's just about going down, but we're looking forward to speaking with you about Billy Meier. We just released, courtesy of you, Michael Horn, right here at Third Phase of Moon, an amazing documentary, a full-length documentary feature, and the people picked it up worldwide. It's going viral right now. Tell us, how did you first meet Billy Meier?
Well, Blake, I first met Meier himself in 2000. I first became acquainted with the case. Pardon me, I'm a little dry because we're up here in Arizona and it's pretty hot. I first became acquainted with the case in 79 through the famous picture book. I then, in 1986, received 1,800 pages of the first 3 years of transcripts that he had allegedly with extraterrestrials known as, at that time, as Pleiadians. And then it was not until I started doing my own presentations, 87 and 88, and then some 12 years, 13 years later, went to Switzerland for the first time. I've been there 14 times. I spent an extensive amount of time with Meier. I was just there with my wife filming him just a few weeks ago. We have spoken extensively. I've met his family. I've met many of the witnesses to the craft, witnesses to 14 of the 22 assassination attempts. And actually, he's been having these contacts since he was 5. He's now 76. So it's over 70 years, 71 years, and that's how it kind of started.
Wow, you just mentioned 24 attempted assassination attempts on Billy Meier himself. Let's start with the first one, or the most extreme and close calls he's had so far.
Well,
you can get into on any of those.
I can give you a little bit. It's actually 22 attempts. I'm sorry if I said 24. From what I understand, the first attempt, there's no longer any evidence because the bullet ended up in his left arm, and he no longer has that portion of his arm in which the bullet ended up. He lost his left arm, most of it in 1965, in a bus accident in Turkey. The attempts on his life have taken all sorts of forms, a lot of them either with handguns, rifles, knives, hatchets, the cutting of brake lines on his car. Attempts to kidnap his children at knife point have been in the mix as well. When I'm in Switzerland, there's a little work shed, and in that shed there's a hole in the window from what I think was the last attempt on his life, probably a small caliber like a 22 bullet that had gone through the glass and missed him. So if this man is any kind of a hoaxer, he certainly has irritated a lot of people. And, I'm simply very, very open to addressing any of the questions pertaining to his contacts. I do maintain that this is the only authentic UFO contact case going on, and I'm always glad to explain my position, or I'm glad to answer any questions pertaining to the evidence, the information, the claims of hoaxing, what have you. And if one last thing, I have a feeling that you and I may be speaking quite a bit about this case over time because there is so much material, evidence, and information.
Absolutely. You just shared with me information just within the past minute that has me shocked, and what you're saying is quite scary, the way you put it. And if it's a hoax and people are trying to take him out just because of this, like you said, that does not make any sense to me. It seems like maybe there's something higher power going on and people in control that don't want to have him get this information out. We're taking calls from around the world, and if people have any questions for Michael Horn, Representative Billy Meyer, call in to 347-934-0378. We're live right now, and we're going to go to our first caller calling in. I think it could be our special correspondent from Los Angeles, Dr. Jandy Elias. You with us?
Yes, it is. How are you, Blake?
Doing good, Dr. Jandy Elias. I just shared with you the video, the full-length documentary in regards to Billy. We got Michael Horn here. Welcome to the show, and if you've got any questions, I'm sure you've got quite a bit because that documentary we showcase is quite fascinating.
It was a great one, and I love the Billy Meyer case because it goes back so long, and obviously it's still being brought up today. But if you ask a lot of researchers, what they'll say is there's as much controversy as there is legitimacy to this, and that's the problem with it. And also at the same time, that's what's the best part about it. But nonetheless, can you tell us what Billy said about their worlds and what they look like and everything like that, and why we humans look like them?
Well, sure, because they are fully human beings. They're not these imaginary aliens, imaginary reptilians, and imaginary greys. Not that there were not and are not beings from Zeta Reticulum that were called the greys, but the fictionalized aliens that have taken over so much of our attention as part of a very successful, what would you call it, program, fomented by the intelligence agencies for a very long time. This is not what we're talking about. Semyaze, Quetzal, Ptah, etc., are fully human beings, ancestrally related to many of us over time, because in many cases their forefathers were the forefathers of many Earth people here, and they were the gods of antiquity, these people. And because many of their forefathers so badly screwed up things and set in motion religions which are now today coming at each other head to head to throw the world into great turmoil, they had what they call a self-obligated mission to try to assist without direct interference or involvement with the mass of humanity as their forefathers had done, to try to assist us for a very simple purpose, to help us help ourselves to assure our own future survival. They are humans. They and their forefathers have been through all of the kinds of grief you could possibly imagine, and even more as highly advanced space-traveling people with great weaponry available to them. These are not the pretend mythical, non-existent space brothers. These are real flesh and blood people. They're more advanced than we are, and they are not, by any stretch of the imagination, perfect.
Very interesting, Michael. People are calling in. I have my twin brother standing by, Assistant Director to Third Phase of Moon, and he's got a question for you, Michael. Hello, Michael. It's Frank Cousins. Welcome to the show, and this is already exciting. We're really having a good time just getting the truth out. And what I appreciate what you did in your documentary, you weren't afraid to show Billy Meyer holding these models of flying saucers. And it goes back to Stanley Kubrick, who's one of my favorite directors. And back in, I think, 1969, he produced and directed the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I believe ahead of its time. Kubrick was a genius. Can you enlighten our audience and explain a little bit about how, if you have any insight, if Stanley Kubrick and Billy Meyer, did they know each other? Were they planning things behind the scenes, or can you enlighten our audience and explain to us what were these ships that were holding?
I'll try to tell you what I can, Brent. The situation is, to the best of my knowledge, they did not know each other. What did occur in the late 70s and early 80s, through Wendell Stevens, Lee Elders, and Britt Elders, who were the three primary investigators to whom we owe just an enormous debt for having the courage to bring this material forward. They did forward to Meyer 3 offers from film studios for him to do his life story. At that time, in 1980 or so, they were offering him $1 million and the use of their special effects department The story goes, and I don't know if this part is true, but it was attributed to Steven Spielberg saying, communicating something to Meyer saying, hey, how do you make those great spaceship films? And Billy purportedly saying, and I think this is in a film somewhere, well, I take my camera and when the ship comes, I press the button. He declined all the offers, including from MGM. And in the film, we show some of the models that were made at the time. Now, let me just say a couple of quick things. Most people do not know, and you'll see this in this film, that Meyer was taking his UFO photos, his earliest ones, as early, if not earlier, than 1964 in the middle of nowhere in India, up to 8 of the ships. He even is photographing. You can see this at the end of the film. You can watch for free, folks. You will see a photograph of Billy Meyer sitting on the ground in front of, kind of in the distance in the back. He's in India. There's like an ashram, and above his head in the sky is a white cross. This is not tape on a photograph. I saw that photo. I was there when we filmed it. This was filmed with a 1940s. It was photographed with a 1940s Kodak bellows camera. It was a hologram generated in the sky by Asket above Billy Meyer's head, and there's a very, very powerful reason for it. Meyer is sitting on the ground in India, the cross, the symbol of, if you will, Christianity floating above his head. According to the information in this case, and there's nothing to believe, Meyer is the last incarnation, the seventh and final incarnation in a lineage of prophets who have delivered the same message to humanity for thousands of years, usually corrupted and turned into religions. And those prophets were named Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, Muhammad, and finally Billy. And Emmanuel, who nobody's ever heard of, is the man who they say actually lived and existed and was crucified, survived the crucifixion, and his name and his life story were falsified to turn it into a fictitious person named Jesus Christ. So this cross, the symbol of Christianity, is floating above the head of the man who supposedly would be the final prophet, who existed in previous lifetimes as the aforementioned ones, and that this man, Emmanuel, who was crucified, survived the crucifixion, traveled to India, lived, taught, and died there at about 110 years of age. Now, if that's not enough to make you scratch your head and go nuts, I don't know what is. But you talked about the models. Meyer's photographing real UFOs from 1964 on, and crosses in the sky above his head. We have a brand new analysis on our site of the controversial wedding cake UFO that everybody says, well, it's just a garbage can lid. Meyer took 63 photos. It's been reanalyzed. Some of the photos are shown to be taken at treetop level. These are 40-foot trees in Switzerland. I was just there helping to clean out the forest. These are tall trees. Meyer's video of that wedding cake ship is on the front of our homepage. Watch it for free or linked from your site, Blake, whatever way you do it. And lastly, there are people who have done very good effects trying to duplicate by studying Meyer's photos, but they will never submit them for testing because all of them show to be models, and Meyer's don't. They're big objects. I think I've overblabbed here, but I wanted to tell you all that stuff.
Hey, well, that's what Third Phase of the Moon is about, getting the information out. And when you spoke of scratching your head, that pretty much nailed it right on the button, because when we look over the video and the photos, some of them could be questionable, but the massive archive and the photos and the videos, they just go on and on and on again. And to replicate that without Photoshop or computers like exist nowadays is just absolutely, to me, makes for a great case, and I think it is absolutely fascinating. I know Dr. J. Andy Elias has a question for Mr. Michael Horn.
I'd like to go back earlier to what you said, that they're not supposed to intervene, and that makes sense. Let us take care of our own and evolve ourselves. but you recall what Reagan said, the speech, that famous speech he made twice, where basically if we were faced with an alien threat, wouldn't we all forget our petty little differences? And living now in the era we are, where you have had things like Roswell happen and other mass sightings and UFO evidence building up, wouldn't it be the right thing for them to step in and do a mass landing or something and make themselves known to basically time? I mean, didn't they finally make that step where they became known to their neighbors?
Well, yes, but there are certain, again, this is the information according to the case. There are laws that govern an advanced race and its, if you will, license to interact with a lesser advanced race. The requirement is that that race must already be capable on its own of space travel. Now let's address your idea of a mass landing. We now have not, 500 million people on the planet. We have over 8 billion. Most people, or at least a huge percent, are involved in very heavy belief systems known to us as religions. These religions disagree with each other. They're, of course, each one the only true religion. And since the forefathers of the Pleiaren were responsible for setting a lot of this grief in motion, they realized that with the sheer numbers of people on the planet, the responsibility they would bear for how many people would go absolutely suicidal, nuts, become violent with each other, how many military operations from different countries would try to attack them, that it would not only be just irresponsible, but it's completely unnecessary. Here's what I like to tell people. Look, if this case is true, and if this case is true, it's one whopping thing, right? There's got to be a reason why one person for 71 years has been contacted by extraterrestrials. And the reason is actually very simple. Hey, we've got to assure our own future survival, and the core of this is complete 100% self-responsibility. No outside forces that we lay down and worship, let alone have to fear, believe in, or obey. We have got to solve this mess ourselves. We have been offered a virtual treasure of information. And before the show's over, I will tell you how you can prove this to yourself in between 5 and 15 minutes. And it has nothing to do with UFOs, even though Meyer's UFO evidence is the best in the world, dating back 40, almost 50 years. But this is about us and us not relying, us not having to be convinced. When you said controversial, you're right. The purpose, and Semyase tells this to Billy, the purpose of the physical evidence was to stir the controversy so we would start to do the hard grunt work ourselves of trying to figure this thing out and never having absolutely stone, solid, irrefutable physical evidence. Even though I think we do, the evidence comes from another quarter and it is irrefutable. But we can get to that. So that's how I view that whole thing.
When you spoke to me earlier on the phone, you spoke of saying that this is the only authentic UFO encounter. Can you explain that and get into more in depth on that? Because I kind of have a little problem with when you say it that way.
Of course, and I know a lot of people do for different reasons. Let me even spell it out more precisely. Meyer's not the only person that has ever met extraterrestrials, and they say that in the material. He is the only person to have ongoing, face-to-face, voluntary, deliberate contacts for a specific mission, and the reason it falls to one person, and he was one of 6 people that could have had this gig, thankless as it is. Do you really want people shooting at you, trying to kill you and your family so you can, have these experiences? Some people say, oh, yeah, I would do it. Let me tell you something. Even what he went through to go out on these photo ops is pretty miserable in the rugged highlands of Switzerland. I was just there in late winter, early spring, and it's a miserable environment to have to go out one-handed on a moped 20 kilometers so you can try and evade people so you can have these wonderful encounters. Okay, why the only person? because the truth, the teaching, what they call the teaching of creation, and all of the laws and recommendations and the ancient universally valid teaching, which has been given to the 6 prophets before him as well, is so specific and requires such strength of character for a person to get straight, to deliver it straight as it is, to not mess with it, as soon as you involve other people, well-meaning as they may be, you're going to end up with the telephone game. You're going to end up with, well, no, they told me this, and all of the rest of the stuff. When you are faced with the knowledge, as he was even before he was an adult, that his life would contain these assassination attempts, that he was told long before he had it, hey, you're going to have to get used to using one arm because your left arm's going to get ripped off of your body at a certain point in life. There's nothing we can do about it. Are you in or are you out? And the guy kept on saying, I keep going. And many times he was ready to say, listen, take this game and, shove it. One person, to have the strength of character, he would have to be tutored from the age of 5. There are many people, and I will refrain from naming them unless you bring them up, who lie and give us this comfortable thing of how they're in contact with extraterrestrials, but they cannot put one solid piece of evidence on the table. Meyer has 26,000 pages, 1,200 photographs, 8 films of video clips, sound recordings, metal samples, 100 witnesses. Look, I have been within 20 feet of a small Plejaren craft. I received information from the Plejaren that saved my butt and Myers, and I am no contactee, and I could not in my wildest handle a fraction of what has been thrown the way of Billy Meyer to bring this to humanity, the thankless task that it is. So I don't even care about UFOs. I've had 6 other sightings. I'm pretty convinced all of them were probably secret military craft. The one in Brazil within 20 feet of me that weren't no secret military craft, that's very nice, and I can't do much more with it. I never would claim that that's the proof of the case. But one man who would do all of this and go through this grief and suffering and torture, literally, to bring this to our world so that over the next decades and centuries we can straighten ourselves out and get into reality, hopefully, that took somebody of absolutely monumental personal strength. Nobody I know of could handle that gig.
Interesting. When you say you don't care about UFOs yourself, I know we have 90,000 subscribers that do care about UFOs. Dr. Jandy Lice is going to ask the next question, but I want to get to this one first. Does Billy Meyer still, to this day, because if you're not really caring about UFOs, do you even bother filming these things anymore?
No, because they told him, I think it was somewhere right around 1980, 81, after he was taking the last photos of the wedding cake ship, which of course has caused nothing but controversy with everybody screaming it's a garbage can lid and all this. And, a guy that I personally helped, by the way, and I have the correspondence to prove it, who's made a great model of it. He's duplicated the effect of Meyer's photos, but if those things are tested, they come up models. Meyer's don't. But here's the point. And I may have lost a little bit. Meyer was told at that time, we will not do any more photo ops because it's really not necessary. With computers now being available to everybody, and soon children will be able to go online and do all sorts of things like that, there's no point in more photo ops because the controversy has been stirred. The evidence is there. It's been analyzed by experts. We've got free documentation on our site, not only the new documentation, but stuff going back 25 years. The photos were analyzed, the films were analyzed, the sound recordings. I shared the stage at a presentation of mine with a world-class astrophysicist, David Froning, top secret clearance at McDonnell Douglas. He got up and he said, hey, just going to tell you folks, I work with a small group of scientists. We have made breakthroughs, we think, in hyperspace propulsion and zero-point energy based on Billy Meyer's material. And if this man is hoaxing, he's being advised by some very knowledgeable scientists. Thank you, no questions. Now, we've got to start looking at this again come back to, well, what does it mean? Sure, look, there's, somewhere on the site we've got the Hasselball video as well. He took a photo where he zoomed in on a craft so close, you can see the flanges and two lights that alternate and flash on and off from 1976, broad daylight. And yet the skeptics want to tell us, well, it's a model. When this one guy tried to duplicate it, he had to paste two little white dots on the ship because he couldn't put any flashing lights on a model. So, yeah, I get how fascinating UFOs are, but there's a reason. We've got to get past it. We are not going to get our hands on this stuff, thankfully, for a long time. Our government, secret government, and other groups in different places, Brazil, Germany, China, France, Russia, Canada, have alternative craft. That's what we mainly see, although there is a major group of extraterrestrials that divide into three separate groups which monitor our world, and occasionally their ships are seen. They do not interact. They will not contact, land, or channel through anybody. They are observers. We've got to become better observers of our own lives and start deciding what the heck we're going to do with ourselves, because if we ever want to get ourselves safely out into space, we got a lot of growth to take care of. And that's why I kind of say, look, folks, I get it about UFOs. I've been into that since I was a kid. And when I saw that photograph book, a book of photos of Billy's in '79, I said, man, those are real. Here's a UFO being chased by a Swiss Mirage jet, photographs a la 1975 and 6. Here's a one-armed guy taking the photos. Here's a medical USAF retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force investigating two top levels private investigators. Okay, this is real. I have no problem with it. What's it about? Why? Dig into the Meyer case for free, folks, for free. And before the show's over, I will get a chance to make you an offer on the ironclad proof that will separate the wheat from the chaff. And if you can get through this ironclad proof and you don't know for yourself logically that this is the real deal, well, enjoy the free DVD that I give you along with that. Back to your questions, please.
Sir, we look forward to the hard evidence. We're going to get to that right after Dr. J. Andy Elias. He has one quick question for you. Go ahead, John.
Well, real quick, I want to talk about the Third Phase Moon documentary. Before that, Mr. Horn, I want to tell you one thing I find interesting is Bob Lazar describing the UFO that he saw as Billy Myers, looking just like Billy Myers. Real quick, the Third Phase Moon documentary, Blake, that you had us film this weekend, I think that went really great. We're telling some amazing stories of what happened to three people and a witness who saw one levitating and much more.
You know, that's kind of interesting, John, because we did produce a documentary. We're receiving the raw material, large files. We're going to be editing the full length. I think we're calling it the Alien Action Chronicles. It's going to be released exclusively right here at Third Phase of Moon. And we interviewed alien abductees. And I think what Michael Horn is saying is that there's a difference between alien abductees and what Billy Meyer is going through. Billy Meyer is on, the aliens are telling him, giving him advice. Because when we're asking the abductees, correct me if I'm wrong, John, they weren't really communicating with them. They're pretty much, there was no communication whatsoever. They just kind of went along with what was going on. But Billy has this connection where they're giving them details and a mission to go by. What do you think about that? First, John, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that that's great that he has that bloodline where he's related to the prophets, and I think at this stage he's probably fulfilled his mission. And Mr. Horn, you're absolutely right that photographic evidence these days is not really helpful because anybody can fake it. So he did what he could at the time that he could. But now, because people have researched him, because the word is out that people believe we're not, half the planet believes there's extraterrestrials out there somewhere, and there's a lot more UFO sightings. Wouldn't it be the proper thing for them finally to make themselves known? I know I said this before, but now why chase him? Why chase his story? Why don't they tell all of us directly?
Sure. Well, actually, my answer is that they have. They have given, and I'm going to just jump into what this is really about. What most people still don't know is that Meyer, in his conversations, and actually even the ones that are dating back to the 1950s, was given specific information in these conversations, and in a conversational manner where it wasn't like, this is a specific prophecy. He was also given specific prophecies that are unfolding before our very eyes. But in these conversations, Meyer was given information on scientific matters just as a matter of conversation. Now, when I knew this case was about something far more important than UFOs, I had read all of these 1,800 pages of information back in 1986. 2 years after that, I happened to be reading a neighborhood paper, opened it up to an article, and the article said something to the effect of, new scientific discovery, Lawrence Livermore Labs reports A-bomb testing tied to ozone damage. And they went on to give percentages and all this radical new information, except I was wondering why I already knew it. Something told me to reach under the bed. I pulled out the first 100 pages. I started leafing through, and within a minute or two, there was that information as told to Meyer in 1975. I got the documents in 86. In 88, it's a new discovery. I'm going, whoa, what's this about? Then, over the next several years, many more so-called new scientific discoveries, like the connection between earthquakes and oil extraction. Meyer was told that in 76. Copyrighted, published, ironclad in books. So I started to think, now wait a minute. Let's look into this stuff. So I started to go back over all this material. And what we did, to fast forward here, a new documentary has been produced by my wife and myself, and it's called As the Time Fulfills. It has prophetic information in there published by Meyer, I think when he was as young as 9 years of age, 11 and 14. But what we do, and it's just about the final 22 solid minutes of the film, we take over 50 specific ironclad so-called new scientific discoveries, and we show you that Meyer published them anywhere from 6 months to more than 54 years before so-called official discovery. And this is stuff that will blow your mind. And I'll tell you that it blew the mind of a man who was a skeptic, a guy I've known for 50 years, a retired physician and scientist, who basically at first told me I was nuts to be involved in some UFO thing, and now his video commentary, his endorsement, calling the Meyer case, and Meyer astonishing and amazing with his prophetic information, is freely available on theyfly.com. He even contributed to our film. Why do I say 22 minutes? Because these are one after the other. You will want to press your pause button, and you're going to go, wait a minute. How could this be true? If this is true, there's nothing that compares to this in human history. They gave him all this information on Jupiter and oil and atomic testing and genetic mutations and you name it. Easter Island statues and experiments that would be genetic experiments performed in Japan in 2002, mixing spinach genes and pig DNA. My gosh. How is a so-called one-armed Swiss farmer publishing this stuff? How is it that in 1982 he's describing holographic touch-screen virtual reality on a spaceship while he's looking at planetary alignments? Folks, this goes so far beyond belief, beyond stories, beyond claims. It's copyrighted. These people were very clever. They took our internationally respected legal standard, the copyright, and they gave Meyer enough material that he could put out in copyrighted books and documents that are ironclad, and it means he published it before it was discovered. And while I'm on a motor mouth run here, let me give you one that knocked my socks off. In 1991, casually, Meyer is told about a coming discovery of what's called the Iceman mummy in the Alps in Austria, Italy border. And so, indeed, 6 months later, this discovery is made. And, of course, people could say, well, he just published it after the fact. But the funny part is, in 1976, this stuff comes out in a copyrighted, bound copy that we show, on our website. Now, why is that important? Because in 2001, 10 years after the discovery, 5 years after we can absolutely prove Meyer published it, scientists take this mummy into the lab to discover through CT scans what killed him. And between 2001, maybe 2010, they discovered two things: an arrow in his back and a fractured skull. When you go to that document, original copyright 1991, secondary copyright 1996, Meyer asks how this man died. And they said, well, he suffered a seizure and he fell. Oh, that could account for an injured head, couldn't it? Yeah, but one other thing. An arrow that he was holding pierced his back. Folks, 5 years before it is discovered with a CT scan. How does this man know this stuff? Now, if this is so, and you can prove it to yourself, and here's my pitch, folks. I'm a shameless huckster. I'm going to pitch you once here. If you buy that DVD called As the Time Fulfills with 50 plus specific examples, I'm going to give you another DVD about the same value with even more information on it, and that will be free. All you have to do is mention these guys, these nice gentlemen who host the show, Brett or their show, The Third Phase. Just put a word in there. You buy the darn DVD that we produce at our own expense, and we send you that plus a free one. You decide. And if you finally get, hey, wait a minute, forget the UFOs because that's not the proof. This is the proof. Then you ask, why? And then we get to the meat of the matter. And I will tell you this. If every person who listens to this show, whether it's now and now being post-original broadcast at any time, if you decide to get off the bandwagon of getting hung up on what this silly world is telling us is the truth, and you find out what these extraterrestrials many, 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 many years in advance of us want us to have access to so that we can teach ourselves how to get out of this pit, it's there. And it's even for free on my website. Just dig into it. You'll find it. But that's what I want to tell you. It goes beyond the UFOs, as fascinating as they are.
Mr. Michael Horn, we have about 5 minutes left right here. And we're getting some feedback. I'm not exactly. Dr. J. Andy Elias, he has a quick
one great thing about this case is that Colonel Stevens spent a lot of time there, and he talked about this incident where he was at Billy's house, and Billy had this document, and he told him that he was taken by some Yazi to a pyramid. This was actually in UFO magazine about 6 years ago. And in the pyramid, he was taken back 2,000, 3,000 years ago, however long ago it was, to a pyramid inside a pyramid in Egypt. And he got this document, and I guess it translated to say Billy. Can you tell us about that incident and how Colonel Stevens got involved?
Well, to the best of my recollection, there's a couple things involved. I'm not sure they all happened together. Meyer was taken underneath the Great Pyramid of Giza when he was only about 16 years of age, I think about 53, to be shown something that Edgar Cayce actually described. And that was a huge spaceship in a virtually small city about a mile underneath the Giza Plateau. That whole operation was run by some very negative human extraterrestrials who'd been on this planet for a long time and who were behind a lot of the religions, etc. However, what Wendell Stevens was talking about is actually someone sent Meyer a fragment which turned out to be thousands of years of age listing the true prophets. And the last one on it, they spelled it B-I-L-L-I, Billy, that way. Now, I think that's very interesting, and it's not, for me, the most conclusive proof. It's nowhere near as good as what you can figure out for yourself. But Wendell Stevens had the most wonderful recollections. We have, and there's videos online, you can find them of him. We have stuff. he was, and his investigative report on this whole thing, it was brilliant. He did just earth-shaking work, and we should thank him forever for it. There is so much in this case, and that's why at the beginning I said, look, I hope we'll visit a lot on this. I hope the challenges will come, but I only hope that people will realize the core teaching. We must take complete responsibility for our lives. And if we ever want to get into what the play Aaron and Meyer are saying about so-called alien abductions, mutilations, UFOs, and stuff like that, heck, it's available for free on my website, and I'm glad to talk about this or anything else. My passion is making this available to every man, woman, and child on earth for them to get into it and decide for themselves if this has value in their lives. That's it.
Michael Horn, we will help get the word out, let the people know. We're up to 60 million views. People are going to be watching this, listening to it. We're going to be doing more updates. The information was vast. It came in fast right here on third phase in the 40 minutes. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. But, Michael Horn, any last words for our viewers right here at Third Phase of Moon? And remember, I just want to tell everybody, if you mention Third Phase of Moon, Blake Cousins, Mr. Horn will supply you a free DVD on top of what you get on top of that just by mentioning Third Phase of Moon. Go ahead, Mr. Horn.
That's right. Order as the time fulfills. We send you a free thing. You'll get about $50 worth for $25. Here's the thing. This information covers almost every aspect of life and anything you could want to know about, from abortion to genetic engineering, from herbs, if you're into healing, from the dangers of radiation, cell phones, specific stuff that Meyer was publishing long before we were even looking into it. It's really a gift, a treasure that is actually been freely given. We will continue to make everything that can be made freely available done that way for you. The blog connected to my website, we have new stuff that isn't even in the film, new corroborations and all this, and how the skeptics help to prove the Meyer case real. So my hat is off to you for daring to go against the huge concerted efforts through NSA and other security agencies that have been at the heart of opposing Meyer and literally trying to kill him and prevent this from seeing the light of day. So I thank you. I will answer emails that come in. Just give me time. There's a lot on my plate right now, but we want you to decide for yourself, and we'll discuss any aspect of it with these kind guys from the Big Island who've had the courage to have this on.
Thanks a lot, Michael Horn, Dr. J. Andy Lyons. Appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you very much, Blake. Anytime.
And Brent Cousins, thanks for having questions. And Michael Horn, we look forward to speaking to you in the near future, getting the word out. And if anybody out there has captured anything amazing in regards to UFOs, we know Billy Meyer's not doing it anymore, but keep your cameras close, keep your hands steady, keep your eyes on the sky. Stay tuned to more Third Phase of Moon. My name's Blake Cousins, and we'll see you again next time.